All right, let's go. So we have Stefan Einhorn here, and I had to take a selfie with you just before we got started, because I'm going to send it to my mom. When I lived abroad, there were a few things she called me about and was excited about. One was the show How I Met Your Mother. That's her thing. And the bro code. She got the book. Yeah. My mom. Brené Brown and vulnerability. And then it was Stefan Einhorn and the art of being kind. So we have chairman of the board at CSS, professor at KI, Karolinska Institutet, and author of a bunch of cool domains such as kindness and wisdom. So a warm applause for Stefan Einhorn.
Well, thank you for that spontaneous applause. I have to start off by telling you that we're not the first to show an interest in wisdom and adult development, because already in ancient Egypt, the newly appointed pharaoh was placed into a closed coffin until he was unconscious due to a lack of oxygen. And then they took the lid off and revived the new pharaoh. And the idea was that the trauma would transform him into a wise and benevolent leader. Now we don't do that anymore. But we use other methods, and let me start off by asking the question, why is change important? And one major reason is our common future, because does humankind have a future? Well, we have positive tendencies, like starvation and poverty is decreasing. We live longer, childhood mortality is decreasing. And we have a number of things going in the right direction, but we also have negative tendencies. Freedom House has calculated that the freedom in the world has decreased every year for the last 13 years. We have less democracy, less human rights, and at the same time the release of carbon dioxide has increased by 50% during the last 25 years. So where will we end up? And which is the most important factor if we are to survive this trip into the future? And according to my view, it is human maturity and wisdom, because in a world without wisdom, there are no survivors. And I've been asked to talk about, can we change? And I told the organizers yesterday that I should have been the first speaker, because if we can't change, we could have all gone home and But let's see where we end up. And I've divided it into 4 questions. Can we change our behavior? And that is a relatively easy question. We can ask if we can be stimulated into being more helpful, and the answer is yes. If you give someone a cookie, they are more prone to help a stranger. And it's also been shown that if you believe that someone has the same birthday, they will help that person twice as often. They don't even have to have the same birthday, they just tell you they have. Now, can our skills be improved? Well, it's been shown in a number of studies that they can. This is a study in doctors. They divided them into 2 groups. One got a candy, one didn't get a candy. And then they tested all the doctors, and on the average, those that received the candy were more creative, were better at diagnosing patients. They did it faster, and they were less prejudicial. So now you all know what to bring to your next doctor's appointment. Now, people will change their behavior more often, and this is good to know, if they like you, if they resemble you, if they commit in writing, so forget about these oral New Year's promises. They never work out. You have to put it in writing. Then it's a greater chance that you will change your behavior. If you're an expert, they're more prone to change, and if they lose something by not changing, they are more interested in changing their behavior. So we conclude that yes, we can change our behavior. Now the next question is, can we change our personality? And personalities are not easy to define, but one way of doing it is by using the big five nomenclature. And people are defined according to 5 groups, not strictly, of course. You can have parts of several characteristics, but these 5 groups contain extraversion, agreeableness, conscientiousness. It should be another group because this word is so difficult to pronounce. Emotional stability is the 4th group, and openness is the 5th group. And these were regarded as very stable during life for many, many years, but now it turns out that they are not so stable. And for instance, as we become older, we become, on an average, more emotionally stable, more confident, more agreeable, and you know what. But this is on the average, and of course we still have these grumpy old men. So, personality we can change, but the next question then is, can personality change be facilitated? Can we stimulate people to change their personality? And let's see. In a meta-analysis performed by Roberts and co-workers, this was studied in an analysis of 207 studies were sort of compiled. And the patients and the healthy people were receiving various forms of therapy and medication. And yes, modest changes did occur. And those characteristics that changed the most frequent was emotional stability and extraversion. And the effects were lasting more than a year. And they were seen in healthy individuals as well as in patients. Now, an interesting observation was that it didn't take long. Within the first 4 weeks, most of the changes were observed, and you hardly saw any changes after 8 weeks. So it's a quick fix, to exaggerate it a bit. So, personality change can be facilitated, and there are other studies showing the same thing. Now, for the final question, can wisdom be facilitated? Can we mature? And this is a list of characteristics of wise people, not all-inclusive, but a number of important features. Humbleness, to be able to see a problem from several perspectives, curiosity, openness, empathy, and you have to be kind. Because by definition you can't be an evil person and yet be wise. You have to have compassion, you have to have kindness. And if I was to define wise wisdom when standing on one leg, I would say that wise people solve complex problems. So what are you if you don't solve complex problems? Well, you're dumb. And somewhere along these lines we find mankind. So what causes wisdom? Well, that is not really known, although quite a few studies have been made, but genes play a role, social context, particularly in early life, experience, of course, trauma. Trauma can give you wisdom, but doesn't have to give you wisdom. Age. If you're a young person, it's hard to be wise. It's sort of a line being drawn at around 30. After 30, you're supposed to be able to become wise. But the problem is it's not an expressway. It doesn't happen that you automatically become wiser as you become older and older. Some do, some don't. And then there are, of course, unknown factors. Now, can wisdom be facilitated? In the short term, there have been several studies, and it turns out that you can induce wisdom quite rapidly. For instance, by promoting an altruistic way of thinking, by discussing life problems, by visualizations, and by actually asking for a wise response. If you ask someone a question and then tell that person, please, I would like to have a wise answer. I don't know if you believe me, but this is what science tells us. That person will become wiser. Sounds like a magic trick, but it's actually true. Now, the long term. Oh, this is a tough one. Because there have been several studies in which wisdom has been attempted to induce, but they have not seen any effects. But then there are studies in which effects have actually been seen, like this study by Ardell in 2018. She took 321 students from classes that either were only dealing with philosophy and psychology, or dealing with philosophy and psychology, and also had a wisdom focus. And the focus during the course was on meaning, spirituality, meditation, good deeds, and self-reflection. And interestingly enough, wisdom increased in those students that took the wisdom classes. But also well-being increased, and spirituality, as well as death acceptance. So according to this study, it can happen that you can willingly entice people into becoming more wise. And interestingly enough, the wisdom decreased actually in the control classes. So this is a relatively well-performed study. And since I've written a book about wisdom, I tend to get this question frequently. Are you wise, Stefan? Are you a wise person? And I will, of course, answer that question, but first I'll give you two quotes. One is from Talmud: a human being remains wise as long as she seeks wisdom. When she believes she has found it, she becomes a fool. And that's so good, so we pick another one by Lichtenberg: a very wise person seeks wisdom, the fool has found it. And with these wise words ringing in my ears, I will answer your question. No, I'm not wise. Now, I'd like to end by stating that if you want to help people along the way, it's not enough to tell people what to do, but you also have to be a good example. And this I bring up essentially every lecture, because children, they don't know They don't learn how to walk and talk by attending secret evening classes. They learn how to walk and talk by imitating. And we continue to imitate as we become adults, and that means that people will imitate us. And that's why it's so important not just to talk about wisdom, kindness, compassion, but to live it. And we would like to do a little exercise with you, if you're prepared for it. Okay, now I want everyone to do exactly as I say. Everyone should do what I say. Please hold your right hand out, palm up. Please hold your left hand out, palm down. Now I'm going to count to 3, and when I get to 3, you clap your hands. 1, 2, 3. It works every time. 20% will do as I say, although I told you to do, everyone should do what I said, whereas 80% did what I did. And that is because we're biologically primed to imitate other people. And that is the reason why we can't just talk about it, we have to live it. Thank you very much.